All right, friends, it's possible that what I'm about to say is going to ruffle some feathers, maybe, of some people. I'm not really sure. So before going on, let me say that I consider myself pretty uniquely qualified to talk about what I'm about to talk about for a very simple reason that I discovered Jack Kerouac when I was, I think, about 14 years old. And On the Road, like most people, that's the book most people discover him for. Although I will say, On the Road is not even among my top five favorite Kerouac books to this day. So obviously a great book, and its place in history should always be respected. But I actually am much more fond of some of his other. Dr. Sachs is my favorite Kerouac book. Tristessa is absolutely beautiful. But anyway, let me not get off topic. Point is, why do I feel I'm uniquely qualified to talk about this? I feel like I am uniquely qualified to talk about this because when I discovered Jack Kerouac, I immediately just took to the dude, took to his writing, and after high school, I actually went out and did the Kerouac thing. Now, I don't mean I had my mommy and daddy's money and bounced around and lived in hotels or something. I mean, I threw a bag on my back, went out west where I didn't know anybody. I would work as I traveled around, work from town to town. And I did it, man. I did it. Real deal, Holyfield. So, most of the people I see who kind of glorify Kerouac and whatever, not most. Yeah, no, actually most. At least most that I've met. They tend to kind of be the types of people. I don't want to get into it, but let's just say I actually lived it. I walked the walk, talked the talk, and for longer than I would care to say. But anyway, here's my point. I wanted to be the next Jack Kerouac, and not in a sense of fame or anything like that. In the sense that I really bought into the idea of being this like kind of like Zen Buddhist wandering poet writer who bounced around, work creating art, and not caring if I was famous, not caring if I had any money or anything like that. Like I really bought into it, and I mean it's all cool. It gave me. I definitely have a very different set of life experiences than most people, so that I guess that's good, and it has served me well as a writer and as a creative person. But anyway, my point is this. This is what happens when most people find Jack Kerouac, and this is the reason why I want to share this. Like I share this primarily thinking about young people who stumble upon Jack Kerouac and think, hey, dude, this is what I want to do. This is how I want to live, right? Like you can definitely see the appeal. But here's the deal, man. When people get into Kerouac, they tend to read the books of when he was younger and he was just super enthusiastic. And I actually personally think he might have had PTSD from the death of his brother, and I think he might have carried it through a lot of his life. But anyway, that's a side thing. But, you read, especially like On the Road, and, Kerouac is always go, 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 life, 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 like just suck up every minute and don't let anything tie you down. Just travel, explore, see this beautiful world, and do all these crazy drugs and get into all these different sexual experiences or whatever, and so when you read it, you're spending time with a young man. You're spending time with a young man who actually he wasn't that young when he wrote On the Road, but still. It's a young man's novel, right? I mean, it's or a young person's novel. It's resonated with a lot of women, I'm sure, as well. And and so you read it and you get all jazzed up, you get all excited, and you think like, this is it, man. This is the key. This is how we're supposed to live. Because the way when you're in that exuberance of Jack Kerouac, it's like, of course this is how we want to live. Like we just want to be traveling forever and exploring and living these lives of adventure. But here's an important thing to remember about old Jack, who my relationship with Jack Kerouac, my mental, emotional relationship, has changed a lot in my years. Now I think of Jack as I love the man like a brother. I think of him as a wayward brother, despite his incredible writing successes. Because if you look at later in Kerouac's life, like number one, he became basically just a miserable small town alcoholic. Which is such a shame. And that's another thing. Like, there'll be a lot of people like try to romanticize or glamorize alcoholism of people like Kerouac and Bukowski, etc. And I used to be guilty of that when I was younger. But, as you grow up, you should realize that that's a bunch of BS. Most of the people that I know who glorify alcohol abuse tend to be people who drink in moderation or drink very little. There's nothing romantic about it. When you read about those aspects of Kerouac's life, to me, it's just very sad. I think it's a tragedy that he wound up that way. In the last years of his life, I mean, they think that maybe a barroom brawl led to a hernia that may have worsened problems that he already had because of his alcoholism, which led to his death. A grown average, I think he was like almost 50 at the time or something like that. And so I always thought it was very fitting, too, that he died in 1969 because Kerouac was such an influence on the 60s generation. And the 60s generation was just a huge influence on the world. I always thought it was just interesting, an interesting coincidence that he died in 1969, which is kind of like the high water mark of the hippie counterculture, which Kerouac also didn't want a part of, had no respect for. Kerouac did not think highly at all of the hippie generation that he helped create. And if anybody is still watching this and isn't familiar with Kerouac, there are a few writers in American history who have more powerfully influenced culture than Jack Kerouac. The whole, like Bob Dylan, all these musicians, all these culture makers of that era, they drew their inspiration from Kerouac. Kerouac's On the Road is... I don't think we could really quantify how influential that book actually was. And he would have to be one of the 5 most culturally influential authors in American history. Obviously I'd be open for debate, and I'm just coming up with that's not something I've thought about a lot. But really, how many authors have led to so many other people who then created and transformed a culture? And how many cultures were as transformational as the 60s culture? Not many. But Kerouac swore off the whole hippie thing. He wanted nothing to do with it. He returned to his Catholic roots. I don't even know if it's accurate to say he ever truly left his Catholic roots, but he returned to his Catholic roots in his later years and swore off the Buddhism. He didn't swear off but he separated himself from the Buddhism thing. Although there's kind of a complicated story to that, because part of it was to his own embarrassment at his own misinterpretations of Buddhism, which got him in not hot water, but I think he realized that he didn't really know what he was talking about, because he received some criticisms from some like long practicing Buddhist figures. But anyway, point is, all of that adventure, all of that crazy stuff, that whole philosophy that you read in On the Road, Kerouac himself swore it off later in his life. And if you look at him, he made a couple media appearances later in his life. He just swollen, alcoholism, swollen face, just looked miserable. In the one appearance he had where he was with Ed Sanders and Ed Sanders of the Fugs and a couple other people, it was on the, what's that guy's name? I think he used to be like a CIA agent. William Buckley Jr. So he was on the William F. Buckley show. And the dude was a wreck. I mean, he was a wreck. It's really sad way for the great writer to go. And let me be clear, he's still one of my favorite authors. I love the man. But I just always, I don't have to remind myself anymore because I'm a grown adult now, but I think it's important to remember when you're reading those early books, to remember that's the perspective of a young man, and that perspective did not lead him to happy places. He did not have a happy ending to his life. He did not find bliss or enlightenment or even happiness, right? And that's my whole point. The truth about Jack Kerouac is that he went chasing a dead end. And when I say that, let me clarify that a little bit by saying, like, if you're a young person and you want to go explore the world, I totally go do it, man. Like, don't be one of those people who just gets locked in one place and does the, typical thing that you wind up feeling like you missed out on so much life and missed out on an adventure. Like, I encourage all young people, get out there, explore. But just remember that is a phase with a time limit. The problem with the Kerouac myth, as I see it, is it's way too easy for young people, especially young people who don't have strong parental figures or just guidance, to read those books and see it as like the truth, the way. This is how to live forever. It's not the way to live forever, man. Like, no, 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 no. You want to go as a young person, just get out there, strike out in the world, explore, have some adventures. Awesome. I think every young person should do that. But just know that it's got a time limit. And if you think that is a path to form your whole life around, this idea of the wandering, aimless whatever, I think you will be very regretful, and I think you will find that it was a mistake. That's no way to live your whole life. Take little chunks, go have some adventures, but it is something that sounds good on paper, but in reality, on paper, that pun came naturally, but it sounds good on paper, but in reality, it doesn't really lead anywhere. And in fact, if it does lead anywhere, it's probably going to lead you to dissatisfaction, unhappiness, substance abuse, and just general feeling of being lost, spiritual malaise, psychological malaise, whatever. And that's the truth, man. If you're into Jack Kerouac, you're into the young Jack Kerouac, awesome. But remember to look how his life ended, because that is informed by the choices and the approach to life that he had as a young man. The two things are connected. And just keep that in mind, my friends. Keep that in mind. Long live Jack Kerouac, one of the great authors of all time, but maybe not necessarily the best philosopher for how we should live our lives. I believe we are supposed to live our lives with goals, with purpose, contribution, etc., etc. And I think maybe Jack figured that out, but a little too late. But anyway, that's just how I see it. As always, love to hear comments, love to hear people's thoughts, so let me know. And until then, peace out, my friends.